guys know that feeling where you lose an argument because you thought you knew what you were talking about, but you actually didn't? Where you feel very, very stupid afterwards. That's kind of how I feel right now. Oh man. This Lenovo PC has been quite a journey, and if you guys don't know the entire story, I definitely recommend watching that video. It'll be somewhere up here before watching this one. The TLDR is though, I bought a Lenovo ThinkCentre for $15, ended up spending $130 upgrading it when I initially only wanted to spend $65, and spent about a month trying to get it to actually turn on. A lot of these problems were self-inflicted, but hey, what's new? It's been almost 2 months since then, and you guys wanted an update. Push this PC to its limit. The i3 530 and GT 1030 that were initially in there were a slap in the face considering the potential that this computer has. I finally upgraded it, but the masterpiece didn't come without some deal hunting and modifications, and honestly I didn't think this was possible considering that the rest of this experience has been anything but smooth. But I'm happy to report that the computer is functioning and it's pretty good for the price. And that I kinda owe Lenovo an apology. More on that later. Anyway, here is the $140 computer that I thought was impossible to build. I went through 4 video cards, 2 processors, and 2 power supplies just to get this computer to boot. And although a lot of these problems are Lenovo's, some of them are mine, and I kind of need to own up to that. And this leads me to the best advice I can give you guys: research. Like, I wish I could grab you through the screen and research. Oh my gosh, it's so important. If you are building, if you are upgrading, if you are modifying any kind of proprietary hardware, pre-built, doesn't matter what it is, you need to research, research, research. And if you didn't get it the first time, I say it again. Research. Please. I bought an RX 560 for this computer for $30. I plugged it in and it had absolutely no video output, no boot, no post, nothing. I did some research, and after a few minutes I came across a supported video card list on Lenovo's website, and there wasn't a single AMD card on the list. This $30 purchase could have been avoided if I just did some more research. Just to give another example, the computer didn't post like I already said. Part of that reason was the 560. Another part was the HP power supply that I bought. I got it for 15 bucks off eBay, and I initially thought it was faulty, but it turns out that the pinout is non-standard. If I did some more research, I would have figured that out pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, a lot of you guys pointed that out in the comments below. It's really not that hard for me to find. I'm giving myself some grace because mistakes happen, but at the same time, this isn't my first time building or upgrading a pre-built computer, so realistically, I should have seen this coming. Regardless, you do need to know what to search for, otherwise this entire point makes no sense. I'll get into that a little bit later, so don't worry. So before I even thought about upgrading, what did I do? Research. I came to the conclusion that the motherboard was the source of my woes. If it wasn't OEM, then I could use any video card that supports PCIe, and my i7-870, which is much faster than the i3, would work without a problem. Taking out the motherboard basically makes it a whole new system, but at this point, I truthfully didn't care. Now this is the important part. I would upgrade the motherboard if and only if 3 of these requirements could be satisfied. Number 1, the case had to support either an ATX, micro ATX, or mini ITX form factor. I wasn't going to modify the case to get a new motherboard to fit. It wasn't worth the time in my opinion. Using my awesome Newegg mod mat, measuring tape, and an old micro ATX motherboard I had laying around, I confirmed that the OEM board was in fact micro ATX. Great, we got 1 out of 3, only 2 left. Secondly, the front adapter must work. Because the system will be given away probably to a household that doesn't know too much about computers, I had to ensure that the front USB panels and the I/O jacks for the mic and headphones worked properly. This one worried me the most because I didn't want to spend dozens of dollars on adapters online. I'd rather just use male to female jumper wires and reconnect the cables that way. Well, praise the Lord, because a user posted the front panel pinouts on ThinkCenter models on the Lenovo forum. And although his model is different from mine, the number of pins matches up identically, so I figured that this would work properly with my system. 2 out of 3, only 1 more left, and the next one was pretty simple. And lastly, the IO shield must be removable. Now, I was able to move it a little bit, and I could see that it was only held by some metal flaps on the outside and the inside of the case, so I figured with some force I could push that out and get the new IO shield in there. With the case meeting all of the requirements, let's go find a new motherboard. I usually use LetGo, OfferUp, or Craigslist for parts because local classifieds have better one-time deals than eBay, but finding LGA 1156 boards locally is pretty difficult considering the socket is about a decade old at this point. I went on eBay and literally searched for the cheapest board shipped that would arrive within a week. It was way tougher than I expected. I thought everything would cost me at most 40 bucks shipped with many options in the $30 shipped range, but I was so wrong. I clearly avoided OEM boards, but I won't lie, some of the OEM prices looked real good considering I had to spend more than 40 bucks. I did see a mini ITX Q57 board for like 30 bucks shipped, but it didn't support overclocking and it also didn't support my i7, which is kind of odd, so I obviously skipped it. I finally decided on an Asus P7H55 Micro ATX board. It's more than I wanted to spend, but I really didn't have a choice at this point, so. Well, let's hope this works. I've got nothing to lose at this point. Should be good though. And now, we wait. After the stuff arrived, cleaning was the first one on my list. I do not want the person to get this and see all that dust and maybe get sick. I don't know. If you guys were here for the charity live stream, then you saw how awful these computers got. There was dust everywhere, and even though these computers aren't state of the art, as SpongeBob says,
can't have dirty garbage.
Plus the motherboard came in kind of gross condition too. I honestly don't know what the seller did with this. It looked like they left the motherboard outside for a few weeks because there's outside debris and dirt on it. So here's my passive aggressive reminder to clean your stuff. Please clean your stuff. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's this virus going around right now. So cleaning supplies are out of stock. Sadly, I couldn't use isopropyl alcohol, which is what I recommend you use for cleaning components. So I just used some multi-surface cleaner that I found in one of my cabinets, and I diluted it with some distilled water, used some Q-tips, paper towels, and rags to clean up the mess. I let it sit for a little bit under an hour to dry, and I started working on the front panel. I ordered some male to female jumper cables and used the forum post to handle pinout translation. I started with just the front panel and tested that to ensure that the system was compatible. Turns out, we were good. Power LED is working. Hard drive LED is working. Power switch works. Yes, thank you, jumper cables. The rest of the pinouts were straightforward, with the audio cable being the most confusing, but I ended up figuring it out. The very last step was removing the I/O plate. I just bent the pins backwards and used some force to push it in, and it fell into the case. I was able to install the motherboard right after that. Installing the motherboard wasn't very difficult, but there were a few surprises. The biggest one being that the OEM cooler actually fit on my Asus motherboard. A lot of you might think this is trivial, but I've worked with Dell and HP pre-builds before, and a lot of the times they have non-standard coolers and non-standard mounting systems, so this was a pleasant surprise. Now I might end up replacing that with a beefier cooler because the i7 is basically begging, literally begging to be overclocked, but I'm happy with the way it is, and I gotta give a thank you to Lenovo for actually making a standard CPU cooler and a standard CPU mounting system. After about 2 hours of prepping the case and maybe about another hour and a half of installing everything, doing cable management, the computer was finally complete. I added an RGB LED strip for 20 bucks just to attract some PC new builders to my Instagram page, to be quite honest, which you guys should follow, by the way, at OzTalksHW. Trying to hit 1K by the end of June. We'll see what happens. As far as a price and parts breakdown is concerned, I got the case and the CPU, which is an i7-870 for 15 bucks on Letgo a few months ago. The motherboard, as I mentioned, was $45 from eBay. I have a GTX 770, which I found on Letgo for 40 bucks. I bought a 500 gigabyte hard drive. It was a pack of 7 for $50, so if we do the math, that's about $7.15 per hard drive. I got 8 gigs of RAM for $15 as well. And lastly, we have a Thermaltake 700 watt power supply for 31 bucks. I do still have the 550 watt power supply for 15 bucks, and I am going to install that here, but I'm using the 700 watt because this computer is actually a part of a bigger project that you guys will see in a few weeks, hopefully, and it was the best power supply to use at the time. Hello, testing. Okay. Everything's plugged in. First boot, let's see if this works. Let's see if this Lenovo PC is finally finished. Oh, I didn't plug in the power cord. Let me do that. Oh, it booted by itself. Well, let's see what happens. Is the keyboard turning on? Okay, we got a boot. Keyboard's on. The i7 is working finally, guys. Oh, this is so exciting. Okay, I don't know which part of the video I'm in, because I'll see that in editing. So, hey, future Ozzy, editing this video. The computer's working, which is awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next transition. All right, the moment you've been waiting for, benchmarks. I will say that I left the computer at stock for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to spend money on a CPU cooler. We've already spent 140 bucks on the system, and I didn't feel like it was necessary to invest another $25 for an above average cooler to actually overclock the i7. Secondly, the case is a hot box, and the motherboard VRMs are not the best. I don't exactly trust the motherboard to hold an overclock over maybe 3.4 or 3.5 gigahertz 24/7. Rainbow Six Siege was very smooth and maintained over 60 FPS in the in-game benchmark. You have nothing to worry about here. Black Desert Online performed fairly well with the mid-spec profile. There were frame dips ever so often, but the game was still playable. An overclock would definitely help here, as well as more RAM and a SSD. Civilization 6 averaged around 45 FPS with medium settings. It's not what I'm used to, but it's solid performance with respectable settings. Fortnite played really well. I used competitive settings and averaged over 100 FPS. If we got the CPU to near 4 GHz, I bet 120 Hz gaming would be possible for the system. Warzone is the saddest story yet. I started at 1080p and a mix of low to medium settings, and it was an ugly slideshow. I tried lowering the resolution to 70% to give the computer breathing room, and it still wasn't working as well as I had hoped. Something else that I gotta add, the temperatures were less than ideal. Y'all hear that? It's putting in that work, boy. You got anything to say? Huh? While there wasn't any throttling, The system fans were pretty loud, and the GPU hit the low 80s while I was in games. The i7 was fine in games in the mid 60s, but in a Prime 95 stress test, it was hitting the high 70s, low 80s. Better fans would definitely help, but I think at this point, it's really just the case it restricts airflow. So almost 6 months later, the Lenovo computer is finally complete. I'm not 100% satisfied, but I am happy enough to finally put the system to rest. During all of this though, what have I learned and what would I change? Well, firstly, this computer was a ton of fun to build. Probably the most fun I've ever had building a computer. I didn't expect rewiring the front panel and doing all the cable management to be as exciting and enjoyable as it was. Building computers can get monotonous, but this was a breath of fresh air. A change I would make is I would probably mod the case and I would increase the specs. It's one of the reasons why I'm not 100% satisfied with it yet. I limited myself to around $140 simply because I didn't want to put too much personal money in this endeavor. If money wasn't a problem and I could have my way, I would totally mod the case, get a better side panel, one with a window, maybe acrylic, have better airflow in the case, get an X58 motherboard and add custom water cooling so we can overclock this i7 way beyond what we're seeing now. Sadly, I don't have that kind of money, or time for that matter. Thirdly, and this is mostly for you guys, do your research. I've talked about it already in this video, but I'm gonna reiterate it yet again. So I say, if it's a pre-built computer, make sure you search for CPU support, video card support, any proprietary pinouts or plugs that the motherboard, the front panel, or the power supply uses or would use, and make sure you search for motherboard form factor in case you do want to upgrade or change it in the future. And lastly, I do want to apologize to Lenovo. I really thought that this computer would be something that would give me a lot of headaches in the future, but after I uploaded my previous video, read some of your guys' comments, and did maybe about another hour of research, I decided to try again, and it ended up working. First try. With all that being said, make sure you guys hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord. I think that's it when it comes to socials. It's at OzTalksHW on everything. Instagram specifically, I'm trying to hit 1K followers by the end of June. I think I can do it. And it's the road to becoming an Instagram baddie. We need more tech Instagram baddies. Instead of posting, bikini shots, we post CP shots. I don't know. I thought I was going somewhere with that, but I don't think I am. Yeah, follow me on all my socials, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.